Welcome to Right There With You, where we lean into life's biggest questions, challenge what we know, and discover the strength we've had.
This is my dear friend and co-host, Ciara Jones, theologian and lifelong explorer of faith, identity, and purpose.
And say hello to my co-host and buddy, Cass Cooper, a professional chaos whisperer who loves untangling the complexity of human relationships.
Here we embrace the journey, no matter how uncertain, messy, or transformative it gets.
And no matter where you are in yours, we're right there with you.
Okay, so we're recording this on Thursday, January 16th. We don't know what our podcast is going to be, but we know that every time we get together and we talk, we say something that's prolific and important and impactful, and we have a voice in this world and we need to get it out there. So we're going to start recording our meetings.
That's a paragon of wisdom, y'all. So let's
listen. We are going to start recording our meetings because this is the evolution of a working relationship that's turned into a friendship, that's turned into a peer, mentor, friend-tour vibe.
Mentor, friendship, sisterhood.
The things.
It can be very heady, but today we're dropping into the heart.
We're dropping into the heart. Listen, this is the thing about, like, that I love about Ciara Jones, for real, is because you really are great at being an intellectual. Like, that is what you lead with. But I also think that just knowing you offline, and you just have such a heart for people. And sometimes you're just like off the cuff, like, wisdom is so good. And I see that you want to include like an intellectualization of that, which we could talk about because I think we both over intellectualize our feelings, like, generally. And we can talk about like where that comes from and all that. But I think that that's one of your strengths. And so I basically told you, don't be prepared.
Yes, which was a gift to me. It's so funny because I'm big on therapy. I think Cass, you're big on therapy too.
1000%. I've been in therapy on and off for 15 years now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because I do a lot of, so Cass is right, I do a lot in the intellectual space, education space.
Yeah.
So I'm talking to my therapist yesterday.
Yeah.
And something that really surprised me is she said, like, you do all of this spiritual, because as I have my DEI side, right, where I get to really do the intellectual, and then I have the spiritual where there's still an intellectual component because I have my master's in theology, but I get to drop into that heart space a bit more. And my therapist was like, you're doing all this work to tell other people how to deconstruct their shame, but like your biggest issue is shame and self-loathing.
Yo.
It's like, you know,
because, well, we study what we need.
Yeah, we do.
You know? I love that. So where did y'all end with that? You were like, I'm sure she gave you homework.
I won't, yeah. I'm not going to take all of her advice, but there's one thing I will do, which is she said, like, get into a spiritual community where you are not teaching, you are the student. Because, like, even the church I go to on Sundays, I'm going to join their speaking team. And she's like, it's great you're there. She's like, but where are you going where you are just being fed, where you are just being to getting mentorship, getting care, and leaving with a full sense of self? Because if you are feeling all these ways, like constantly pouring out, it is an empty cup phenomenon. You have to be full too. So, like I said, I'm going to take 50% of her advice, but I saw you make a face, friend. So tell me what you think.
Yeah, no, I think that that's good to, you know, maybe back off, or to be someplace where you can be fed, you know, that saying iron sharpens iron. Like, we got to be around people who are going to make us better. And I think spirituality is one of those things where you do need people to say things that they don't know that they're speaking into you. Like, there's something beautiful about being in a spiritual space where it's like, that wasn't for me, but it was for me. And because it just allows spirit, God, to kind of just like operate and like show themselves. So I think that's really dope that she suggested that. But I do think that in the content you do or have done on TikTok specifically about spirituality, it's like you are saying things that make so much sense to the masses. But maybe there's a need to look at what makes the most sense for you. And one thing Christian Smith, that we both love, big fan, has said in the past is don't create the content, be the content. And I think that's one thing that, and this is part of the reason why I wanted to do this, you know, conversation this way, because I wanted us to be able to just like be and exist without thinking about who's going to consume it.
Yeah.
Because again, there's so much to be said about just
being
letting your truth breathe and live and exist, and then whoever it's for will find it.
The thing for me that comes up with like being the content, like, or letting more of my personal life or inner world being seen is like shame, because like it is like being human is messy and silly and not always clean. And I don't feel like we live in a world that is very gentle or generous with the most fallible parts of one another. And so I think like when it comes to me like of being the content, I think I have this fear about like, I don't know, coming across not like together. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no,
let me explain
a
that. Yeah.
100%, because like you said, vulnerability is messy, right? And I mean, I feel like as Black women, vulnerability is not something that's championed for us. And so it's hard to be speaking and writing and encouraging other people to be vulnerable, but then still have this fear of doing it yourself.
Mm,
But it's at the same time, that's also why it's so needed. And I think there is this like this desire to, am I truly being authentic, and what are people going to think about it, and how are
yeah.
they going to receive it, and what if nobody reads it, nobody watches it? And we've
Yes.
all had those videos or those blogs that go up and you're like, it didn't go viral, I gotta take it down.
Like we are in this world of virality where we forget the power of one-to-one connection. Like if you gave a talk off the cuff and 100 people signed up and came, you'd be like, wow, like I filled this room. When it
Hmm.
comes to online, we do think that content only matters when it hits a certain threshold. And I do find that remembering that every single view truly is a person who is connecting, who brings their own story, can change our relationship to our content and storytelling too. I struggle to internalize that, but I think that's something I try to remember as a content creator is like my job isn't virality. It is to connect and to reach into the void of loneliness and make someone feel seen. And if I do
Yeah.
that, that is successful content, no matter how many people engage.
Yeah, but Sierra, you are that. You are that way. I mean, let's just think about the way we met. I literally like slid into your DMs and was like, "Hey, do you want to work together?"
Yeah.
And here we are, what, almost 3 years later, talking about like,
3 years, man.
and we've like, you've stayed at my house and we like kiki on the couch, and like my kid is like all obsessed with you. You know what I'm saying? We know each other's
I
partners and
too.
we're just, yeah, we've
Yeah.
traveled together. Like, and now the other thing that I'm trying to lean into is, and this will get into like our mother's conversation,
Yes, I was gonna say that.
oh, um, is that true true intimacy with me is a privilege that I get to give to whoever I want, but my vulnerability is something that has power.
Hmm.
Right? So, like, I can be vulnerable online and say things, because really the reality is the things that you share in your story are the ones that you've already processed and worked through. And because you've processed
Mm.
and worked through, that makes you an expert in them, right? But
Yes.
the things that you have not processed and worked through, you're not going to want to share on stage, because that intimacy is something that's reserved for the people that are closest to you. So I think that like this, because I that conversation came up, in a conversation I was having about my mom and just the stuff that's going on in my family. And like, I apparently am like, everybody's trying to figure out what I'm doing because I went no contact with, so like pretty
Yes.
much
In your life. Yeah.
some by choice, some by their choice, some by my choice. But now it's like you start, especially that I'm making content, so you see me, you see the fruits of my labor, right? And so that begs the question of like, or I'm hypothesizing because I don't know, because again, zero to limited contact. It begs the question of, well, how is Cass doing all this stuff and we're not, you know, like a part of it, and we're not amplifying it, or like this expectation that without this particular group of pre-picked people that happen to be my family, that means that I was going to fail in some sort.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Say more about, or how did you conquer that or approach that or
Well, I don't know that I've conquered it. Let's just be honest about that. Where I sit, I don't feel like I had much of a choice, because the people that I chose to go no contact with, not were never going to be my champions. They're not capable of this level of conversation even. They're just not capable of getting to where I emotionally need in order to reach my big, hairy, audacious goals. And so much of the care that I've driven to have for myself has been based in unlearning and undoing the image that they had of me and the box that my family put me in because of birth order, because of their own generational trauma, like all these other things that we talk about over and over in therapy and online and all that stuff. But I, I I think what hit me the most is years ago, I realized like my mom is never going to be proud of me.
Mm,
And I can be proud of myself, even if she is never going to be proud of me.
mm,
It I am living by someone else's, her standard of who I should be and how I should show up, but I'm still unhappy. And because she's never going to be able to fulfill that part and say like, good job, I have to be able to say that to myself. I need to be around people who are going to say that to me. I need to find a different way. So to answer your question of how did I end up there? It's more of I ended up there because I had to. It was either shrink back and continue to be in this box that was created for me or leave the box where it was and create a bigger space for myself. And it was literally like, not to be hyperbolic or dramatic, but it's like a life or death situation. I really truly feel like if I would have stayed the way I was, let's say 8 to 10 years ago, I don't think I would have made it. I think I would have succumbed to depression. I was drinking way too much. Like I think it would have been dark.
yeah, absolutely. You kind of answered my follow-up question. I think a lot of people are assessing. I have two questions actually. One about reparenting the self, but I think my first is also around, a lot of people are assessing, how do I know when to go no contact with my family? What and so was there like a value system that you look or a decision-making process that you went through to know
Yeah.
because I think the question people have, especially we're a society that one valorizes biological family and kind of says no matter what, you stay in connection with these people. And
Uh-huh.
we can demonize the person who chooses that disconnection without looking at the dysfunction of the family system to understand why the person made that choice. So I'm wondering for you, how did you kind of assess your family relationship to say, hey, I think it's healthier for me to kind of create some distance versus.
Yeah. Well, one, I want to say, no matter what your decision that you make, even if it's, you know, that these people are not for you or you want to stay in relationship and contact with them, you decide to go zero contact, you go zero contact for a little while and find a point of reentry. Like, no matter what your decision, one, it's going to be hard. And two, it's the right choice for you at the time because you can only do so much with the information that's in front of you, right?
Mhm.
I wish someone would have encouraged me to be gentler with myself because I knew I was being mistreated
Yes.
and, emotionally abused, but I also felt shame around saying that out loud. I should, and now it's like I feel bad that I don't feel bad. Whereas before I just felt bad for wanting to be free of that environment, right?
Mm,
So I think like be gentle with yourself no matter where you are is would be my first thing. And then I think the second thing is there is no checklist. For me, I just got to a point where I just cannot do this anymore with you. I went off of this roller coaster. I recognize the patterns and we are stuck in this pattern. And no matter how I change my reaction, we still line up in this pattern.
yeah.
So at that point, it's like, well, it's not me. And then also realizing I can't fix you, which was a huge thing. The no amount of communication or intellectualization, emails, texts, voice memos, like when someone is committed to gaslighting you and showing that narcissistic tendency, and we use narcissism a lot culturally,
Yeah.
and
Too
to
much.
me, like way too much.
Yeah.
There is like my therapist had to tell me, have you ever considered that your mom is a narcissist?
Mhm.
And there's a book that I read. Gosh, I can't remember what it's called. Basically, it's about narcissism and family dynamics, and every single chapter was like an experience that I had had. But the big question that my therapist asked me was, what kind of relationship do you want to have with these people in general, right? So it was my mom, my sister, my ex-husband. Like, what type of relationship do you want to have with
Mm.
them that is still giving space and honoring to the values that you have right now?
Yeah.
And so the question is, do you want to have a relationship with them? Because if they never change, everything about them stays the same.
Mhm.
Do you want them still in your life? That
Mhm.
was a big question. And with some people it was yes, and with some people it was absolutely not. And so it's like if you do want to have that relationship with them, they're still not going to change. So how can you use the coping skills that you've developed to create healthy boundaries? Because boundaries are not just where you start and I end or vice versa. Boundaries are the way that I can love you and me at the same time.
Ooh, I love
Yeah.
that. Oof.
Like, so
Boundaries are
it's
the way
like
you
I can love you from over there. I can love me from over here. But if I have to love myself less in order to love you more, that's not a relationship that I want to be in.
Oh, what a beautiful that's a I mean, what a beautiful metric of helping us to understand if our relationships are fulfilling or not. And I do think like I think a lot about what does it look like to break a generational curse because I think we talk a lot about generational trauma or generational curses. I don't really believe in trauma. Let's go a generation or I don't believe in curses. Let's call it generational trauma.
Yeah.
And like
That would be the religiosity coming
yeah,
out. Like
exactly.
black church girls here. Yes. Oh, it's a curse.
Yeah, I don't like the first aspect because it makes it seem like there's like something that will like a boogeyman that's going to follow you or harm
Yeah,
you.
it's giving demonic. It's giving
Yes.
No.
Yes, yes, and there's a few things you mentioned that I wanna speak to. One, as Cass knows, I have a very strong relationship with my mother, but that has we've had periods of estrangement, and we've had periods of disconnection over the time since I came out. I came out in 19, I'm 31 now. So we've had our journey over this last decade. And one of the biggest shifts in our relationship was when I got into Harvard. And at the time, my mom was like very disapproving of me, very disapproving of my life. And I was living with my partner from undergrad at the time. I could tell she was frustrated that I didn't move home before going to Harvard. We had all these conversations. And I remember being in trauma therapy and being like, but I did this for her. Like I was
Woo!
raised to care about education and care about status and care about prowess. And I became what she asked me to be. And I'm still not approved of. I'm still not received. Right. And my therapist had said to me, she was so sweet, but she was real. She was like, if Harvard didn't do it, nothing's probably going to do it because it was never about becoming this thing. It was more about her having to work through her own projection of what it looks like to be good enough and to be enough and the way that she projected that onto her daughters or projected the expectation. And I found our relationship radically shifted when I realized like I don't need your approval to have a beautiful life. But I do think you make my life more beautiful, like, but I don't need
that that
your
is so good.
for my life to be enough. And I think she
Yeah.
also shifted to understand that our relationship wasn't approval based, it was mentorship. I feel like my mom is more my mentor, my friend now than my mother. Like, she's my mother,
Hmm.
but, like, I'm not afraid of her, I don't see her as authoritarian, and we had that shift, and I think that was really helpful, and when you talk too about your story, it made me think about what is, again, breaking generational trauma, and I went through a major life transition last year, I had a major relationship end, and my mom was the one that really pulled me out of my depression and my fear, and we went to the ocean together, and we talked a lot about grief, and I realized, like, my mom left a 20-year relationship marriage. Her marriage ended with my father. And, like, because she raised 3 kids, she actually never had space to feel that. And it made me
Yeah.
realize that a lot of breaking generational trauma as Black women is giving ourselves the full spectrum of our emotional reality, giving ourselves the grace to feel it. And I hear that in your story too. You took the time to evaluate your family relationships and you said, these should not be obligatory spaces where I feel small. I should feel loved deeply. And if not, I'm going to reevaluate this. And so I see in you breaking generational trauma by claiming your right to emotional space and emotional presence and emotional safety. And with me and my mom, I think a lot about me breaking generational trauma from her in the sense of she had no space to grieve fully, to feel her experiences fully. She had to just live life. And I think a lot of our mothers, Black mothers, lived on like almost emotional autopilot and emotional repression. They couldn't even ask the questions we get to ask, which is
Right.
kind of beautiful too.
And that is, to me, that is breaking the generational trauma,
Yes.
right? That is the holding, defying gravity,
Mhm.
holding space for the full breadth and depth of our emotional and psychological and spiritual existence. And I think that for so many Black generations is something that we have not been able to do, and was, something that was a privilege, not an
Mhm.
expectation. And so I think especially in the 20th century, I would hypothesize that during enslavement, like that was something that was like, well, for lack of a better term, beaten out of us, right? Of like,
Yes, yeah.
and so now it's like, what I love to see about Black women specifically right now is that reclamation of that
Yeah.
being able to say, like, like that's what that whole soft life era was about, right? Is I'm going to choose to be soft. I'm going to say no to this so I can say yes to myself. Right. I'm going to continue to show up, and let's not undervalue like how hard that is. It's so easy. It's
Only it can be
because
very
you're literally undoing your
yeah,
brain
yeah,
chemistry, the things that you thought were going to be there, the
yeah.
grief that comes along with that. Like a big part of leaving my marriage was grieving what I thought was going to be. Like I thought I was going to have at least 2 kids. I thought we were going to, build a generational wealth together. I thought that we were going to like, and to realize that those things were not gonna happen, right? That not only were they not gonna happen, but that I could continue to chase a dream that was made for me, or I could start living a life that I actually
Mm.
love and value. And I'll tell you who put me onto it was my dad. My
Mm.
dad left my mom after 30, almost 35 years of marriage.
Wow.
And I kid you not, the last 5 years of his life was the happiest I had ever seen him. He traveled. He was always full of joy. He would go, girl, my dad was in the gay club hanging out with his gay friends that he hadn't seen in years because of like, well, whatever reasons, whatever, like raising kids, whatever. But and being in church and stuff like that, there was men who he was super close to in a great, beautiful way, totally platonic, like cool. And he would go, I'd be like, Dad, where are you going? He's like, oh, I'm going to such and such bar. I'm like, it's a gay bar. He's like, I don't care. Drinks are cheap. And
The
that's
vibe
where my friend is. And I'm meeting my
yeah.
friend and his husband. Like, and I could never imagine my dad doing that. But
Mm,
I think it was because he gave himself the space, and he had
mm.
the audacity to choose happiness, right?
Yeah, I love that, absolutely. Something I thought about when you're talking, even though this was your father, was like, Patricia Hill Collins has this framework of other mothers.
Yes. I
And,
love,
like,
love.
I
Shout out
think it's
to
so
the OGs
yes,
of
yes,
Black
absolutely.
woman
Oh
writing.
my
Yes.
gosh, yeah. Patricia Hill Collins is that girl. If you're an anthropologist, if you're a sociologist, if you're in law, if you're in politics, Patricia Hill Collins, she's so,
Yes.
interdisciplinary.
She literally, like, I mean, she literally wrote the book on Black feminism. Like, that is the name of the book.
She's that girl,
So,
and I think that's something that I don't as you were telling your story, it made me think about, like, where I wonder for you, because you're estranged from your mother, where you get other mothering, and I want to like, your place
mm,
where I get other mothering. I think
yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
women in my life that do that for me, and something that I realized this year, especially navigating a lot of grief, was, like, you need to find other mothering with women who have an expansive understanding of what it is to be human, what it is to be alive. Because I do think when I was grieving last year, I went to a lot of friends who had like a truncated, who saw life through very black and white, black and white lens. Like if you're happy, it's because you're doing good, and if you're sad, it's because you're doing bad. And I think what I found is like I have these really, but I also found these really beautiful other mothers who have a lot of wisdom, who dig into their own experiences, who have space for the beauty and fallibility of others. And that has been a big part of my own healing. So I wonder for you, as you disconnected from your mother, did you find other mothers or
Well, my friend, you are another mother to me. For real. Ay. But for real, I think like, um, I really feel like a big part of that is leaning into my friendships with women, specifically Black women.
Mm,
I think that there's a few people that have become mentors to me. like even like at work. And then I think of having intergenerational friendships is so important,
That's
right?
crazy. It's honestly under talked about. Like, it's
So
very, very
much.
important. Yeah.
I think that is a huge thing. I think honestly, being living as a mom, not saying I'm leaning on my daughter for emotional support because that is messed up and not her role. She has the right for her own like lane. But I also feel like watching and seeing her allows me to mother myself because I get to do the things with and for her that I would have liked to have had done, right? I just think that we like it gives me an opportunity to see things how I may have been experiencing them as a kid and then be like, oh, I'm a grown up with my own money. I could go do that, you know? Like, um, like I found out that I really actually love art and I'm very creative and I love like doing things with my hands. So like when she's like finger painting as a kid, I'm like, I'm gonna get down here and finger paint. Or
Mm,
so now I do like paint by numbers. I signed up for a pottery class, right? Like finding things that I'm like, oh, I actually really enjoy doing this and it brings out like a childlike spirit and it's a place where I can be calm, but I get to see that
mm.
because she's experiencing life for the first time.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. Jasmine Mans has a book, Black Girl Call Home, amazing book of poetry. And I think it's in this book that she says like mothers and daughters are like, or maybe this is Alice Walker. They both have a quote around this, like that mothers and daughters give birth to each other over and
Over and
over,
over again. That's
right?
Alice Walker for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yes.
Jasmine Mans
Yes.
talks about it too, like mothers and daughters are like this mixture of blood and becoming. It's a really beautiful poem.
Yeah.
And like that's what I when I don't hear you like ever putting your daughter into a parentified child position at all, like you're an amazing mother. You're
Thank
phenomenal.
you.
I find healing watching you parent. Like
Oh
you're
my God, you're so cute. That's so funny. Girl, she be getting on my nerves though. Sometimes I'll be like, oh Lord, go to bed.
no, you're such a gentle parent. Every parent's a part of me too. And like, but I think with my mother, and what I see probably with you and your daughter as well, is like I feel like before my mom and I had this more like I am your authority relationship. And as I come into my 30s, it's more like I think we do give birth to each other over and over again. Like I see parts of my mother liberated in interaction with me. And as my mom has changed, parts of me are liberated with her. Like as a kid, she did not really give a lot of space to emotional pain. So as an adult, for her to be someone who reached into my grief, who gave space to my grief, every parent did something that she had parented differently before. And so I
Yeah.
kind of hear that with you and your daughter that like, even though you do not parentify her, loving her and seeing who she is maybe allows some part of you to be liberated. And I think that that's really beautiful.
100%. And I think it is so powerful. And honestly, I do get jealous seeing other mother daughters be able to do that, right? And to be able to like care on each other and just like exist together and like, your choices are your choices and
Mhm.
being able to say, or even like the younger daughter being like, okay, you're going on a date. Like, what up? Like, let me tell you what's good. There's some TikTok woman, she was like, what it's like to date a younger, whatever. And she's like asking her kids, like, what, what does this mean? And like, reading his text messages and just trying
Right.
to figure out, I don't know, like, and,
Yeah.
she was like, I have a really nice red blouse or whatever. And they're like, Mom, don't wear a blouse. You know what I mean? Like, I just think that is so cool. And I think every day of like, okay, in 30 years,
Mhm.
what is my kid going to be saying to their therapist on the couch? And I
Mhm.
want it to be like that my mom was the mom that I needed.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? Like that is my hope. I hope she thinks like that. I hope she feels that way because I really want to show up for her in a way that I don't have, you
Yeah.
know?
I love that. And something I'll say is I already know that she will do that. But even if this is not going to happen because you're an amazing parent, but I want to say like, even for me who grew up and like my mom and I developed that closeness over time, like because of how beautiful our relationship is now, my story of our relationship as a totality has changed, has transitioned.
Yeah.
And I think something that my mom, like I always say, like it's true. My mom is the greatest love of my life. The greatest love story of my life is my mother. Period. And I think part of that is because we have loved and seen each other through deep transition and through each other's fallibility and each other's mistakes. We have loved each other. We have given a lot of space to allow one another to transform and stay in relationship. And so I wanna say, like, even her transformation these last 5 years has made me see my childhood differently, more generously, with more
Mm,
graciousness. And so I think something that we can do, I think particularly in the world of cancel culture, and we have very ideas where we cast people as good or bad or right or wrong, is we deny also that when people transform, our story with them could transform too. Like, I wonder what gift your mother could have given you if she could have sat in the reality of your disconnection with her and frustration with her
yeah.
and shown up to the table. Because knowing you, I feel like you probably would have given space to her to change,
Yeah.
Or like, and so I think
Totally.
oftentimes we experience our mothers in a negative way because they never gave space to our experience of them. And you're a mother who does that. So it's like,
Mm,
even if as a human being you make mistakes, because all people do, I think she will always have a really generous experience of you because you're willing to be introspective. Like, I never wanted my mother or father to be perfect. I just wanted them to be self-reflexive. Like,
yeah.
was the only requirement, and my mom
Yeah.
got there, and that changed the relationship, so
So I guess I would ask, like, as your mom has grown and changed and matured, what have you seen that's like different, or maybe like what was the catalyst for those changes? Because I would bet that some people are out there like on the other end. They're the mom who is estranged, right? And so it's like, how do you like what changes did you notice that were helpful,
yeah, I think
right?
this is such a brilliant question because I think we sometimes forget that radical transformation comes from radical pain. For my mom, like, I'm the youngest of 3, and her and my oldest sister went through a deep estrangement, and I think that experience for my mother, like, was so painful that it, like, jolted her into this introspective relationship with herself. Like, all of a sudden, she was more curious about how she was showing up, how it was impacting dynamics, and I think no matter my mom was a baby boomer, so she's of the generation where it's like children fall in line, and I think all of a sudden, I'm a millennial, it became like, well, children wanna have a generous and
What are you doing with all these feelings? We didn't have these feelings when we were younger. I'm like, you actually did. And maybe if you address some of the feelings, we
yes,
would be able to get along a lot better.
absolutely. Because, like, for example, I adore my maternal grandparents, and I know there are things that they really put my mom through that were difficult. And my mom came from a generation where it's like you don't question that, you just stay in relationship with your parents. So it's like like she had the right to name some things that my grandparents said that were not good for her, but I think she felt like my duty as a good child is to serve them, be in relationship with them. And then millennials really challenge that dynamic that's existed for a long time in the US around parents and children. So for my mom, I noticed that that estrangement, I think, shocked her. I think it made this realization of like, oh, this dynamic with parent and children has changed. And how do I not just expect a relationship with my children because they're my children? How do I know them? And I found that like all of a sudden it changed from like you are my child to like you are not just my child, like you are another human and a person and a friend who I want to know. And like my mom like is a very big on education, on career, on financial stability, and set us up for success in those areas, but sometimes in a perfectionistic way. And I know the first big change I saw in her, outside of her being really accepting of my female partners, I don't have multiple partners at once. I just mean like over
That's
the
another episode where we talk about like polyamory and like,
I have no, I'm just kidding. But one was she became very queer affirming and like really started to invest in my partnerships, which was really kind. And then I started my own business 2 years ago, and I noticed like she had changed. Like usually, if I called her, it would be like do the most stable thing, but she was like chase your dreams and live a life that's full of joy and live a life that makes you come alive. And I found that every time I talk to her now, it's affirmation. It's inviting me to be expansive. Even when I went through a major breakup last year, like I was really suffering and I didn't know how to navigate it. And something she said to me was like, "You are a black woman. Like you owe no one your suffering. Like we live a life of suffering. Like where is your deepest joy? Where is your deepest self connection?" And like even when we went on vacation, when I was really going through it, like she sat me down and was like, "I want you to feel deep self esteem, deep self love." And so it's funny because I think probably in therapy, my shame voice and self loathing voice is probably an amalgam of her voice and another voice and other
yeah,
voices in my life.
yeah,
Yet still, through her reparenting, that voice breaks a little bit as well. Like
yeah,
it's almost like she's reparenting that voice that she initially maybe instilled that was so perfectionistic to be a lot more self-forgiving. And that's been
yeah,
right. But
yeah.
I want to highlight it was that pain inflection point for her that caused the catalyst. And I've even actually thanked my sister for being brave enough to be estranged because I think her estrangement actually gave me the gift of my mother. But that's a
Okay,
complicated.
it's a very complicated thing because I'm not an only child. So, right? So, like, I think part of what I noticed, because there's a gap of 4 years between me and my sister, and then I call him my brother, but he's actually my cousin, you know? And so, there's this, like, the way that I would, because by the time they got to like coming of age, I was already in high school and then out of the house, right? So like I would see the way that things were at home and I'd be like, damn it, that's not cool. Like, what do you mean? Like, you get to go and do all sorts of, and I had a great experience growing up. Like, I was very privileged, especially economically and like educationally and stuff like that. But I think the way that both of my parents were able to show up emotionally was very different. And I look now though, and I see like, my brother had a long, long period of estrangement as well from all of us for a lot of different reasons. But I think part of his thought process was he thought that we were all happy go lucky in this great family dynamic and he was the odd man out. And I was like, no, you were out living your life and having this amazing experience. And I'm over here trying to keep it together with, tape and staples. And
Oh,
so, like, it's just so interesting the way that we see like the same trajectory and experience. But I
yes.
wanted to shift a little bit and I wanted to talk because you talked a little bit about perfectionism and you talked about like shame that you had. And both of us, part of our genesis of our friendship has been talking about deconstruction and Christianity. So I cannot have this conversation without us talking about the way that we were brought up in church and the
Mm,
way that we were taught about Black womanhood and our mothers would behave in
mm,
connection to like the image we were supposed to have in church because that was a huge thing. Listen, my dad was a deacon, my mom taught Sunday school. I was on the usher board, we were in the choir, we were doing all the things. We were the it family of Mount Zion Missionary Baptist Church. You know what I mean? So,
mm.
but then like at home, that was not necessarily like in retrospect, I understand that that wasn't the case, but at the time, I was like, "Oh, we doing the thing," you know?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good question. So I was brought up, it's actually funny. Before we were like, I grew up Assemblies of God, Pentecostal. But before we were Pentecostal, I guess when I was a baby, we were Jehovah's Witness. I never do that until like a few years ago. I was like, I don't remember.
Girl, hold on 2 seconds. My dog is going crazy. Hold on, I'm gonna let her out real quick. She's literally like sitting, like, let me.
Also, I do have a Pride in the Pews meeting around 2:45. Be cool if we just go for 10 more and then we'll.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. This is
Okay,
great. This is amazing.
this is great. I can't wait for you. And also, this is just a nice conversation for me. And just,
Yeah,
I just needed to process out.
yeah. Listen, I have all the things
Yeah.
like when we stop recording, I'll tell you my big hairy audacious goal. But
Next week I'll show you my Patreon. I just launched it, but it won't launch until February 17th. So like I
okay,
said, I'm gonna talk about what that can look like for us to do
yeah,
it together or something like that.
absolutely.
But yeah, I think that like, well, so it's so interesting because one, I want to say the way I see my mother changes as I get older in general. Like, I think that just happens. Like, I'm 31. I think by the time my mom was my age, by the time my mom was 33, she had 3 kids. I have no children. So I think like, I try to really think about like, I like this year, like last year I went through a 4-year relationship that ended and I was undone. And like, I try to remember like my mom had a 20-year marriage in and then had 3 children, like right there to raise. Like, I do try to see her in the context of which she existed. And similar to you, I grew up wanting for nothing. My mom has a high level education. I do see, even in the midst of things I'm frustrated by sometimes in my upbringing, like how much I was given. I hold those two things with a lot of nuance and care, I think, as well. And I hold her now through the lens of a woman who went through one of those hardest things ever when she was like my peer. Like she could be my peer right now going through that. And I just can't imagine being 33, divorced with 3 kids, y'all. I can't imagine. I just like have a lot of space for what that process looks like for anybody. But something that is real is like I think a lot of Black women probably relate to this. I feel like my mom's divorce catalyzed her fundamentalism. I really do. Like I think that there's a sense of, especially like my father is a surgeon, and I think there's a lot around her and status and losing it as a Black woman, losing a good man, quote unquote. A lot is put on
He's
you.
a good man,
Yes,
Savannah. He's
yes,
a good man, Savannah.
yes. Listen,
Girl.
yes. she went through that
If
too.
I had a nickel every time when people would say, "But your ex-husband is so nice." Girl, come over here. You come over here and live with him.
Yes, because the bar is in hell, especially for black. If you're with a black man with a highly employed and wealthy, it's like, why would you leave this man? You know, but like
Because
without
the
looking at.
bar is in hell is a line.
And it's the bar is a house below the seventh level of hell. Satan is holding the bar and they're doing limbo together. Like, it is bad as hell. But I name all this to say, like, my mom like put me into youth group and I think didn't understand genuinely. I feel like wasn't understanding like the toxicity of that theology. And as a young adult in my early 20s, I blamed her for not protecting me from the toxicity of fundamentalist theology. And now at 30, I'm like, I think she was a victim of it as well. And I named that because I remember being 16. I was really into the Bible. I was like preaching around my local high school. I was really into it. And my mom came to me and she was like, I feel so grieved and embarrassed and shameful about my divorce. And I just say to her, like, well, this verse says, like, if a man does X, Y, and Z things that dad did, you actually are allowed to divorce. Like, this person ruined your marriage covenant. And like, it made me realize, like, I think that she's also invested in this church because she was given a deep shame around this thing that is not hers. And
Mm.
I also developed a lot of shame from fundamentalism. And like, I was in therapy the other day and I like, because I went through a hard year last year, I asked my therapist, like, I said, how do I avoid this type of hardship? How do I never suffer again? Like,
Oh,
that's
I
what
can't wait to hear what they said. How do I not suffer again? Good luck. Die.
because I felt like all my suffering was self inflicted. I had no wisdom. I just felt so low. And that's still something I work through a lot. Is this feeling like I have a lack of discernment that caused my own suffering. And my therapist was like, my answer to you is always shame, addressing your shame and seeing yourself more generously. Like everything you go through in life will look different if you can access some sort of self-compassion or generous self-view as you navigate it. And I did think her answer was going to be like fix X, Y, and Z about yourself. And it was profound.
You thought she was going to give you a list of things to.
Yeah, that sucked about me to answer. So I think like when you talked about fundamentalism, it made me think about how it can give a lot of black women so much shame about who we are and how we think and how we feel. And for me, I guess the lesson of living a good life. And something you do with me is like every time I call you and I'm like, I did this, that, you'll be like, okay, slow down, Savannah. Do you like yourself today? Do you love yourself today? How can we have a generous view? And like that really, I think, is the answer for so many of us as black women is liking ourselves, truly liking ourselves. I know that I don't. That is my work right now, is to like myself as I am. And I think that will change a lot of my life if I can get there. And I'm crawling towards that, but that's been the work in therapy for me is addressing my shame, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Like the shame spiral is it's so real,
Yeah.
especially, I mean, having gone through a divorce, you
Yes.
know, and I think the big thing, well, one thing I want to say is so often we're taught that laundry list of things that's wrong with us, if we fix them, we'll be better, and
Yeah.
therefore then we'll be loved or lovable. Not that we'll be loved, but we'll be lovable because then you still got to go out and find a man to love you. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that is so, or we're told all these things that are wrong with us. I'm telling you this because I love you. Because I love you, I'm going to tell you that you really need to work on not being so big and bold and boisterous because no man is going to want you, right? Like I'm telling you that as a sign of care when in reality that is just like
Tearing
harming you
you down.
so hard and
Yes.
at your core and is steeped in so much patriarchy, so
Yeah.
much misogynoir. Like it is just so, and it's just really unfair. And for nothing, for lack of a better it's just so unfair to think that those things are what make you lovable when really the thing that makes us lovable is just the fact that we are in existence.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes. And like I remember my therapist yesterday had asked me like, what do you think is the purpose of life? And I think I said like to get as introspective as possible and succeed. And she was like, none of that was about happiness, presence, connect, like just being with your life and seeing your life as enough. And even like the current relationship I'm in, like when my partner and I met, like I was in the trenches of sadness. I had some friends reflect back to me like, you don't want someone that would want to love you in these places. I'm like, but isn't this the exact place I want someone to
No,
love me
you
in?
want somebody to
Isn't this
love you. That is the other mothering, loving
yes,
you where
yes,
you are the most tender. Like
yes,
being able to like mend the like, help me mend the parts of me that I don't want anybody to see.
yes.
That,
Heart to heart.
listen,
That's there.
that is sexy.
Yeah,
Tell me it's not.
because you're not leaving because that it creates so much intimacy, care, connection, and it also undoes the thing in us, like you said, that feels like we have to arrive to be chosen. And like
Mm-hmm.
I think that like we have this idea of like you're like especially like you said with black women and being chosen by men, and the messaging in the church is when you're prayerful enough, when you're spiritual enough, when you're faithful and obedient enough, then this man will come. It is this idea that when you're at the pinnacle of self, then you receive partnership. Partnership means seeing each other through the season. Like I think there's a beautiful quote is like to love someone for a lifetime is to attend 1,000 deaths of them as well, attend 1,000 funerals of who they were. And you want the person that can grieve the parts of you that change and love the parts of you that are becoming simultaneously. Like that's the person that you
Yes.
want to have relationship with. And that's not easy to find. But I do think church, even though it's a church, it's weird because church is simultaneously about being loved in our broken places. But I think also simultaneously gives us the messaging that when we're in our broken places, we deserve shame. We deserve bad things. I don't know. It's like this, like
Well, I
complicated.
mean, I feel like the church is they're not really invested in fixing you because if you get fixed and you're no longer broken, then you have no reason to be there. So whatever.
Absolutely.
That's fine.
Yeah.
I don't know. We're coming up on time. We could talk forever because we're besties. But I'm so glad that we're doing this. This is gonna be so good.
We're gonna do so many great episodes, and what's gonna be awesome.
And
And like
we'll wait till we get people on. Like
oh,
it's gonna
girl,
be
we're
it's
gonna
gonna
have a fun ass time.
If today's conversation resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It helps more people find this space of exploration and connection.
And if you want to go deeper, support us on Patreon. Your membership helps us keep these conversations going, and it gives you access to exclusive content.
Because this isn't just a podcast, it's a community. And no matter where you are on your journey, we're right there with you.